Hello, everybody. I'm Howie Hawkins. I was the Green Party and Socialist Party candidate for president in 2020. And this podcast is about continuing to educate and organize for the eco-socialist program that my running mate Angela Walker and I ran on. And today we're scheduled to have a guest from Papua New Guinea. It's Andrew Kutapae, who is the Secretary General of the Greens Party of Papua New Guinea. And he hasn't hooked up yet. We worked it out last night, although we had some technical problems. So while we're waiting for him, I just want to make a few comments on current events. First thing is the slaughter in Gaza continues. Yesterday, there was an attack on the largest hospital still functioning in Gaza, in Han Yunis, and Israeli airstrikes and beginning of ground operations are moving into the southern border city of Rafah, where 1.7 million Palestinian refugees, most of the people in Gaza, are crammed into 23 square miles. And it's going to be a slaughter if those people are not removed before Israel goes on its ground offensive. And aside from the civilian casualties caused by Israeli military operations, untold numbers are dying from hunger and disease because food and medicine and other supplies are not getting in. So we've just got to keep demanding and being out on the streets and on the editorial pages, op-eds, letters to the editor, any way you can, demanding a permanent ceasefire, immediate food, medicine, and other humanitarian aid to save lives in Gaza, an end to U.S. military aid to Israel, an all for all prisoners exchange, all the Israeli hostages held by Hamas and Islamic Jihad for all the Palestinian political prisoners held by Israel, and a peace process toward a political solution. And I think our protests are making a difference. Spokespeople for the administration and Biden himself have changed their rhetoric, and they're telling Israel to cut back on the civilian casualties and not go into Rafah without evacuating the civilians. But if Israel goes into Rafah anyway, we have reporting from administration sources saying if Israel does that, there will be no consequences in the form of U.S. military and diplomatic support for Israel. So we got to demand action and not empty words. And meanwhile, in Ukraine is running short of air defense missiles and artillery shells, and Russia's back on the offensive. And with the shortage of air defense missiles, this week only half, instead of 90% of Russian missiles and drones that are targeting civilian infrastructure in Ukraine are being intercepted, which means Russia can start flattening Ukrainian cities like they did Mariupol, or the cities they've conquered like Bakhmut and now Avdiivka. And Avdiivka was Ukrainian forces retreated from Avdiivka yesterday because of a shortage mainly of artillery shells. And so Russia's making on the advanced lines. And that's Andrew Kutapae. So I'm going to take this, and maybe Chris can fill in while I take this call.
Yeah, you could take it. What were you talking about? You're talking about Ukraine. Um, I guess I'll pivot and say Howie has a new piece out in New Politics. We're going to share it on social media tomorrow, but I just put it in the chat. Um, it's a long piece in their Winter 2024 edition um, about Cornel West, Jill Stein, and the Green Party. Um, it goes into kind of a lot of the background that Howie talks about on the show about why Greens exists and everything, and gets into the 2024 race. Did he not answer, Howie?
Yeah, he's having internet problems. It's the internet's down where he's at in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, which happens. So he's going to keep trying, and if it doesn't work out today, we'll have to reschedule.
Okay.
Oh, he's calling again. Hold on.
Yep. Sorry, everybody. The fun of international guests. But yeah, everybody should check out that piece in New Politics from Howie. And like I said, we're gonna have to share it on our social media tomorrow. But I just put it out in the link.
So keep going, Chris. I'm sending him the link again.
Okay.
Maybe this will work.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, hopefully we will be joined by Andrew. Like how he said there, Andrew's the Secretary General of the Papua New Guinea Green Party. I believe that Howie met him when he was in. No, we've been talking since before South Korea. We've been talking about Papua New Guinea since the campaign. Now that I'm thinking back to it, so we're excited to have Andrew on, and hopefully he'll be able to get his internet going and get back on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in Papua New Guinea, just in terms of recently, crisis with the government, voting no confidence. The Greens did have a member in the parliament, as well as local officials, but Andrew can fill us in when we get there. So
it looks like someone from the government spoke in the Australian parliament this week too.
Yeah, the Australian Greens work closely with the Papua New Guinea Greens because the southernmost part of Papua New Guinea is only 100 miles from the northernmost part of Australia. But the societies are a world apart. So I was just, going over what's going on with Ukraine. So, the Russians are on the offensive. Their missiles are getting through to Ukrainian cities, and they're going to turn them into rubble like Gaza City, like they did to Grozny in Chechnya, or Aleppo in Syria, or Mariupol in Ukraine itself. It's a dire situation, yet U.S. military aid to Ukraine has been blocked by the far-right Republicans in Congress. Now, what happened this week was the aid passed with the border control provisions stripped out in the wee hours of February 13th by a 70-29 vote, which shows that the majority, all the Democrats and enough of the Republicans, are for this aid. But, the Republicans were saying, well, we got to have border security in order before we provide security for Ukraine. And then it was put in the original bill, and then the Republicans said, never mind, and they stopped it because Trump told them to. They don't care about immigration or Ukraine. They want to make immigration a campaign issue that they can campaign and blame immigrants for all our domestic problems. So it got to the House, and the Speaker, Mike Johnson, refused to bring it to the floor. And now both the House and the Senate just left for a 2-week vacation. And when they come back February 28th for the House, they'll have 2 days to stop the government from shutting down. They've got 12 appropriation bills, or at least a continuing resolution to pass. So it's a mess. Now, some Democrats are talking about using a discharge petition to force a vote. And some are also talking about separating the Ukraine from the Israeli aid because progressives want to vote for Ukraine, but not for Israeli aid. But that is a process that will take at least 5 or 6 weeks after they return, after they deal with the funding crisis. And frankly, it's not even clear that the Democrats want to solve this problem any more than the Republicans. I heard this morning on MSNBC, the chair of the Progressive Caucus, Pramila Jayapal, was on, and she was asked by the former Republican chair of the Republican Party, Michael Steele, why don't the Democrats seize the initiative and use a discharge petition or even split the bill in order to get something done? It would show up the Republicans, it would make Biden and the Democrats look good. But Jayapal said, well, the Republicans are the majority in the House, and they should own the consequences. In other words, this is the chair of the Progressive Caucus. She's saying the Democrats want to make foreign aid a campaign issue, just like Trump wants to make, and the far-right Republicans want to make immigration a a campaign issue. So where we're at is both parties could care less about electioneering than solving problems. And migrants, Ukrainians, and Palestinians are paying the deadly price. Both corporate parties are pathetic, and that's why we need a Green Party. We need to get people up there in the House and write down the ballot. And we need an alternative in this country because the two parties governing it are making a mess of things. They just can't get anything solved. And I also want to comment on the death of Alexei Navalny. This guy, the day before he supposedly just dropped dead, was having a court hearing. He's got 30 years in a prison colony before him, and he was cracking jokes. Even the court officials were laughing at his jokes. He looked great. And the next day he's dead. And how do you think that happened? I think it's pretty clear because Putin's opponents drop dead, they get assassinated. One of them was shot on the street. A reporter back, 15 years ago, same thing. But, the U.S. shouldn't be so smug about it, the U.S. government, because they're prosecuting Julian Assange, who is really sick. And, if his extradition hearing is next Tuesday, if he's sent to the United States and put in one of these maximum security prisons, probably isolated, he may not survive. And, the U.S. will be responsible for that. I have problems with Julian Assange's politics. I think him tweeting or, some kind of coded messages he was doing with Donald Trump Jr. as the 2016 election approached, and he said it would be, quote unquote, interesting if the Trump campaign objected to the results. I think Assange just doesn't have a clue as to how dangerous the racist reactionary forces that Trump represents are. But that's not what's on trial. What's on trial is the fact that he published information. And if he's found guilty under the Espionage Act for that, it puts every newspaper, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, you name it, Christian Science Monitor, if they get documents from the government and write a story about it, and most of what we find out about the government is because somebody in the government leaks the information. If Assange is found guilty on that, it's going to, really cripple freedom of the press. So, what Putin has done to Navalny is terrible. And also what the U.S. is doing to Assange is also terrible. So this week, the Australian Parliament called for Assange charges to be dropped. The Australian Greens were prominent in the speeches made when that was done. And so that's just something else we got to fight for. We got to fight for our rights, our freedom of the press. And the Assange case is very important to that. So we still don't have Andrew. I could go into the details of the discharge petition and splitting the vote. And all I can tell you is, just briefly, a discharge petition, it requires 30 legislative days. That's the days they're in session, not the weekends and their long weekends that they take. And then once the discharge petition is adopted, and what it would mean is the majority of the House says we want to vote on this no matter what the speaker says. So you get all the Democrats and some Republicans, and you've got enough. In fact, now that Swazi was elected down there in Long Island, it's a 6-vote difference or 6-member difference. So if 3 Republicans switch, you got enough if all the Democrats hold. So, that's really, can be done. But once they get the discharge petition, it's another 7 days. Now, those are regular days, not legislative days. But we're looking at, 5 weeks before there's a vote. And given that they got to deal with the budget crisis, it's more than that. Meanwhile, Ukraine has lost its ability to defend itself because the U.S. won't give them arms that they can use for their self-defense. It's a terrible situation. So I'll stop there and let's go to questions and comments until Andrew gets on, if he can. His internet was a problem, so he may not be able to get on today, but we'll see. Scout Trooper 164, Johnson couldn't even get Israeli-only aid out. How does he expect Ukraine aid to be split from it? Well, the Democrats can go around Johnson, along with a few Republicans, and do a discharge petition. And they can write their own bill that separates, or bills that separates Ukraine aid from Israeli aid, so that people can vote on them separately, get them to the floor by a discharge petition, and that forces a vote. Johnson can't stop that. The only thing stopping that is people like Pramila Jayapal, who say, well, yeah, let the Republicans own this mess, which is not really trying to solve the problem any more than the Republicans tried to solve the immigration problem. They just want it as a campaign issue. Like Jayapal apparently wants it for the Democrats on Ukraine aid. So, yeah, Johnson can't stop it if the Democrats want to do a discharge petition. Scout Trooper 164, Trump is such a man-child, gets fined over $300 million and bitches online about what happened like a little kid, so self-entitled. Yeah, and if David K. Johnston, who's written biographies and reported on Trump for the New York Times, et cetera, since the 1990s, if he's right, Trump doesn't have the cash to pay this stuff. I mean, he's ruined, and we'll see when the time comes. It's going to be delayed because he's going to appeal, and he won't have to fork over the money for a while. But when it comes down to it, he may not have the money. He may be bankrupt. It'll be interesting to see. So yeah, Trump is whining, but he was inflating some of his properties, 10 times when he was going to the banks to get a loan, and then said they were worth a tenth of what he said to the banks to the government when it came tax time. I mean, it's obvious fraud. What he said the square footage of his penthouse at Trump Tower was 3 times more than it actually was. I mean, this is so blatant, obvious. It's no wonder he was convicted, and that the fine was almost everything that the State Attorney General, Tisha James, asked for. Yeah, it's, between the fines for E. Jean Carroll case, the defamation case, in this case, it's in the mid 400 millions is what this guy owes, along with a couple of his kids. So it'll be interesting to see if he's as rich as he's claimed, because people like, hey, here's Andrew. So
hello.
It's good to see you. I'm glad you made it through. So let's just switch right over to Papua New Guinea. I'll just give a little background. I met Andrew in Korea last June at the Global Greens Congress, but we've been communicating since 2021 about what's going on, and I've been, trying to support what they're doing. But Papua New Guinea is a country with biodiversity as well as cultural and linguistic diversity that's as great as any region in the world. But a big problem is global corporations, including US-based corporations, are destroying that biological and cultural diversity, particularly through extractive mining and logging industries. 1/3 of Papua New Guinea's forests have been cut down, and those forests are the basis for the livelihood of the indigenous Papua New Guineans. And the alternative to this, unique among all the parties in Papua New Guinea, are the Green Party, which starts with a commitment. It's in their platform, their materials, of respect for diversity that honors the biological, cultural, linguistic, and religious diversity of Papua New Guinea, and upholds the rights of indigenous people, ethnic minorities, women, and LGBT people. And they're the only party that really supports those human rights full throat. They also call for a participatory democracy based on grassroots community control of local affairs and electoral reforms at the national level, including proportional representation, public campaign funding, and full disclosure of private campaign funding. So they advocate a model of development based on ecology and social justice. And they also support the independence movement on the western side of their island in West Papua, whose people have been resisting a brutal settler colonialism by Indonesia for 60 years. So I'm glad Andrew can be here to tell us more about that. And so, Andrew, the floor is yours. Tell us more about what we need to know about Papua New Guinea and the Greens Party there.
Thank you, Howie. Um, I was already introduced by Howie. I'm Andrew Kutapae. I'm the Secretary General of PNG Greens Party. PNG Greens Party was registered in 2001, but was not active until around 2011 when Senator Bob Brown, Australian Greens leader, came to PNG where we had a convention, and I was elected General Secretary of the party, Secretary General of the party, and I've been actively participating or instrumental in bringing the party forward to today's level. PNG Greens Party, we got an MP, the first MP, I think, in the Asia Pacific region, besides Australia and New Zealand. We got him. He joined the party. He got elected not as a Green Party in 2017, but he joined our party as the party leader in 2021. And then 2020, when we went to the elections, Honorable Richard Masere was returned as a Green Party MP, being the first Green Party in any national parliament in the region, in the Asia Pacific region. So we've been happy to have him in the national parliament. We have a national executive, but that consists of a president, a treasurer, myself as the general secretary, and Richard Masere as the party leader. Now, for the last few years, we have been actively involved in human rights issues. Okay, that also includes Australian government sent some refugees from Australia to PNG to be based here in Papua New Guinea while they were organizing their third country to settle in. They were being processed here in Manus province, and these guys have been here. The refugees have been here for maybe more than 10 years. But to this stage, most of them, they were sent to Australia, New Zealand, and some other Canada, America. But I think some are still here. Now, one of the other roles that I've been actively involved in is the West Papua case. West Papua is a province in Indonesian province. In Indonesia, is a province, but the human rights or abusing of human rights have been very evident for the last few years, for many years. And because of this, and because the people on the other side, they are Melanesians like us, Papua New Guinea, we have like black people, you know. So, and Indonesians cannot continue to do this. That's why PNG Greens Party, I was been instrumental in trying to organize to see if we can do something about it. I traveled to Indonesia once in 2014. I went to Merauke and Jayapura. Jayapura is the capital of West Papua. So I've traveled there, and I was being a little bit careful not to say anything or do anything because of the military presence everywhere. If they find out that you are here doing something against the government, you can be either killed or they can do anything, So I was a bit careful. I went and came back, and we saw a lot of people being mistreated on the other side. And what they are doing, the Indonesian military is doing in West Papua, in the villages, it's really not good. So, they're violating their human rights. The people are not doing things properly. They are not managing their affairs on their own. They are just, military is running the place there. They're not really free, I should say. So PNG Greens Party, after coming back from the Global Greens Congress in South Korea, I decided to organize something which I can't say here, I think. So I need some funding, financial assistance from you guys to go across and organize a Green Party there. If, Green Party in West Papua. I want to do this straight after the elections this month in Indonesia. Probably I'll go towards the end of the month or early next month. So PNG Greens Party is seeking support to do this. I think that's briefly what I can say about West Papua. I can't say much, but like I said, the people there are being not treated properly. A lot of things that are happening that needs our attention. To go and organize something so that they are representative. Organizing to register the West Papua Greens.
So we will put in the chat, there's a documentary film about this brutal settler colonialism by Indonesia on behalf of multinational corporations that are logging and mining. And we can put that in the chat. And we can also put in the chat how to send funds, Western Union, so Andrew can make this trip to West Papua, this fact-finding trip. So that'll go in the chat soon. Andrew, one of the things that struck me about the Greens Party in Papua New Guinea compared to the other parties there is that in the last parliamentary elections, you tried to have half your candidates be women, which is, nothing like the other parties do. Could you talk a little bit more about how that went and, why that's so important for your party? Oh man, it looks like Andrew froze up. Hopefully he'll come back on.
Hello?
Yep.
I think it must be network problem.
Yeah, well, you're back on.
Oh, okay. 22, when we had the national elections, we endorsed, PNG Green Party endorsed 5 women and 5 women and 5 men, and then we this besides Richard Masari, who's the party leader. So almost half of our candidates were women, and we were the only party in the country who endorsed, half of the candidates being women, and because of our Global Greens policy, we have to all the time when we're endorsing candidates, we make sure that half are women. So we did that, and most of the ladies, although they didn't do very well, at least they voiced their concern about women participating in elections, participating in everything. Women are equal to men. And in anything that we do in PNG Greens, we make sure women actively participate. This gender equality is very important in our policy. PNG Greens, PNG government does, employ women and women, but they are not. They're like marginalized. They are not treated as we should. So PNG Greens, we thought we will do very well, but we didn't. We managed to bring Richard back, as he was the only MP out of 10 MP. I mean, candidates is still okay, and it was the first time that we ever went into full swing election. Previously, we usually endorse one or two or three, 2012, 2017, but 22, we endorsed 11 candidates. So I think we did quite well.
So tell us what's been going on recently there. There was a pay glitch for security people, military, and there was some demonstrations and protests, and then a vote of no confidence for the prime minister. So, tell us what's been going on in that drama.
Okay. On the 10th of November, no, 10th of January. Yeah, 10th of January, we had a pay glitch. They realized that they were heavily taxed by the government, all public servants, police, defense force, all other public servants working for the government. They had a big cut in tax. I mean, they increased their tax tremendously. So, police thinking that nothing will happen like it did. We are calling it Black Wednesday now. They had a demonstration in Port Moresby, and they declared, the police association, they declared that, look, there won't be any polishing in Port Moresby City today until we get the Hanja. So that gave the people an opportunity to, ransack the whole city. They burned down stores, looted the stores. It happened for almost all day. It almost was spread to other parties, other districts in provinces in the country, but unfortunately, they maintained those. And so it was, now it's back to normal. The money that was taken off as tax was reimbursed in the next fortnight, and then now it's becoming normal now. So there's no problem with that. It's normal. They're being taxed as usual. Usually they've been taxing us. Now the other thing is the vote of no confidence. According to the PNG Constitution, you after 18 months grace period, the opposition can anytime introduce a vote of no confidence on the prime minister or the government. So that is the process that is going on now. At the moment, the parliament session is on. It started on the 30th of February, and is going on now. They will. Last week was one whole week parliament session. There was actually what happened was they introduced the government when there was a vote of no confidence notice was given to the speaker. The government turned around and they voted the prime minister through a vote of confidence, and there's 84 to 0. All the opposition, they walked out of the parliament, and this has never happened before. Normally it goes through, the vote of no confidence normally goes through. So now looks like the vote of no confidence will be introduced again next week, Wednesday. So that's what the opposition is planning to do. So we don't know what's going to happen in the, tomorrow, Monday onwards, and then the following week. It's 3-week session. So we're still expecting a vote of no confidence in the government. It's unpredictable because in PNG, you don't know. The MPs can join another party or join the opposition anytime, they can move anytime because you are not tied down to that party. The constitution doesn't tie you down to a party that gets you elected into parliament. Okay, so unfortunately, PNG Green's party, party leader decided to join the ruling Pangu party. He tendered his resignation to me. So I haven't really replied to his resignation yet. But like I said, he's free to go. So we allowed him to leave the party. But I'll give him a letter tomorrow, Monday, telling him that, we are not pleased that you left. Why can't you stay with us as a Green Party MP? And then we have always been supporting the government, so you should remain with us. And then we support James Marape, the Prime Minister. So I don't know what his response will be when I give him the letter tomorrow. And also, our party leader was given a ministry about 3 weeks ago when there was a reshuffle. So he's the minister for administrative services, assisting the Prime Minister on constitutional matters. So we have been lucky to get a ministry, but now that he left, we are just staying, staying put and see what it's going to develop. He may decide to come back. He may go for good. I'm not too sure, but we're going to invite him to come back again and tell him to stay with Green Party, but we can still support the government.
So when Andrew says tomorrow is Monday, for him it is, because it's Sunday in Papua New Guinea. It's like 6:40 in the morning there. Whereas over here in the United States, it's still Saturday. It's 3:40 where I'm at. So he wasn't mistaken saying that tomorrow is Monday. For him, it is. My impression is most of the parties, not the Papua New Guinea Green Party, but most of the parties are not based on a policy platform more than they are on ethnic and ties to powerful people. So that I'm wondering if this vote of no confidence is just a move for power by one of these, factions that are. It's not about policy, but it's about power. Is that accurate?
Exactly. The vote of no confidence is, well, in one way it is. They are not happy with how the government is being run by the Prime Minister and the government. It's and the other thing is that most of the time it's hungry for power. They just sit and criticize all the time, and then when the time comes up, when the grace period is over after 18 months, bang, vote of no confidence. It has been happening for 10 years now, maybe 10 times or so. There's been vote of no confidence in any government.
It sounds like the U.S. Congress. As I was talking earlier before you came on, the Republicans don't want to solve what they say is a national security problem at the border because they want it as a campaign issue, and they want to blame migrants for domestic problems. And then the Democrats have the votes with a discharge petition to get Ukraine aid passed, but they don't want to do that because they want to blame the Republicans. So instead of solving problems, they're playing these games for power. And so I think, the Greens Party in Papua New Guinea actually has a policy platform. They're running on progressive policies, unlike any other party. But we shouldn't be smug about that in this country because the Democrats and Republicans are a lot like those factions in Papua New Guinea. It's about power, not solving problems. So, good luck with that. It sounds like they're going to have another vote. And you think it's going to pass, or do you think the opposition will fail this time again?
Unpredictable. The government is still claiming the Pangu party has 56 members. 6 members is almost half, and then they can get other parties to support. But opposition is also very strong, saying that they can bring in some of the members from the government across to the opposition. So we still have to. We just have to wait and see how things go. It depends on, sometimes it's not really they go for the party leader or the government, but it's like individualistic. They support when they get projects. The MP is given a project by the government or no, this kind of thing. So we'll have to just wait and see. Any development, I'll update you.
One thing I want people to understand is that Papua New Guinea is not in the headlines here, but we're connected to it. Because when these companies extract minerals and lumber, that goes into our consumer products. Actually, more goes to China, but then they're manufactured there, and we buy a lot of them. And what that does is rob Papua New Guinea of its wealth. The indigenous people don't get much of it. In fact, their land is taken from them for these, for this cutting of timber, which is the basis for their livelihood. So they're being exploited, and we're connected to it through the world market. So there's a concept of ecological debt. We talk about climate debt. There's also an ecological debt. And given, how the world economy works and us being a big consuming society, we owe an ecological debt, which is both financial, but also reconstruction of the environment and restoration of the environment in Papua New Guinea, which should be part of the global Green New Deal. So I think, this is not just something detached from us. It's something we're linked to through the market, even though we're not often conscious of it. So what is the Papua New Guinea Greens Party doing besides paying attention to what's going on in Parliament? I know I've seen pictures of you got youth and women's groups out there doing environmental cleanups, mobilizing people. Tell us more about your activities between elections.
Well, we do a lot of awareness. I have 4 regional offices. That's the country is divided into 4 regions. In fact, the Highlands, the New Guinea Islands, Southern region, and the Momasa region. So the country PNG has over 800 languages, and people are scattered all over the world. There is no road connection. Most of the people fly by air. So that's why most people live in the villages. Only those who can afford to work in the cities like Ley, Mount Hagen, Port Moresby, Rebel, they live in the cities, but the majority of the people live in the villages. So we have programs every year to do awareness to the villages, to the people, to the schools. Like in the cities, we do cleaning campaign, clean the city, wear our T-shirt, our logo on it, and then we do clean up, maybe once or twice a year, and then we do awareness, environmental issues, human rights, all this. We try to make sure that the planet Earth is a safe place to live in. PNG is a safe place to live in. A lot of tribal fights and so forth especially in the islands region. So we do awareness campaign. We promote our policies, gender equality, and people must get clean water, eat good food, It's very expensive to do all these things, but our regional party executives, they get involved in organizing all these things. They do their own little fundraising and all this in the regions, and then they are encouraged to go from town to town and encourage people to and talk to them about our green policies. But it'll go a long way because of lack of funding. We don't have enough funds to do this. Like there's going to be a party executive meeting. I just received a message last night. Tomorrow, after the talking to our party leader, I'll try to fly up to Mount Hagen to have a party executive meeting, because most of our party executive, two of them live up there, and I'm only 1 year, so I have to go up, but then I'll have to look for money to fly up and fly back. So these kind of things, and then I come back and approach Richard, our party leader, and tell him what the view of the party, and we may even go to the press, have a press conference in Mount Hagen. So we do these small things, especially encouraging youths to join the party. When we do the campaign, we try to recruit youths to join the party, women to join the party. Our woman wing coordinator, she organizes that with the regional branches, and then our young green show coordinator does the green show coordinates with the regional officers, and does the recruitment on youths to join the party.
Yeah, one thing you do, and may have proportionally for, given the incomes in Papua New Guinea compared to America, members of your party pay dues. So you have some resources. You may have more than our national party does, because we just ask for donations and they have to compete with candidates running for office and state parties and local parties. So our national party our center is very weak in terms of the support it can provide to state and local parties. So I think, that's something that American Greens need to look at. But I've been monopolizing the questions. If anybody in the chat, I see Ashley R has been posting a lot of information. Seems she's been following Papua New Guinea for a while. But if anybody has questions or comments, please let us know, and Andrew can respond. Okay, Ashley R, that's an archive page, but it has pertinent information. Almost 2/3 of the population is Christian. Of these, more than 700,000 are Catholic, more than 500,000 Lutheran. I think she's referring to the balance of members are other Protestant denominations. And although major churches are under indigenous leadership, a large number of missionaries remain in the country. The bulk of the estimated 2,500 Americans in Papua New Guinea are missionaries and their families. So I'm not sure what the archive page refers to, but Ashley put 3 documentaries in the chat that they're about Papua New Guinea. They're pretty old, but yeah, they're worth probably looking up, because there's not a lot that's been done on Papua New Guinea that the rest of us can see. Andrew, if I may ask you a question, how big are you on train travel? Because I read an article about the resurrection of a defunct railroad line between Scranton and New York. So I guess Andrew's asking, you have to fly everywhere rather than building roads. What about trains in Papua New Guinea?
No one has ever thought about this. No politician, no MPs ever thought about, introducing trains in the country. So it will probably happen with, 10 years time, 20 years time, 10 years time, 20 years time, we don't have trains here. We only fly. And airfares are very expensive, It's the domestic airfares are very expensive. Like me to go from here to Hagen, it's 1,000 kina. Again, it's a 1 hour flight, and 1,000 kina to go up is return is 2,000 kina. And then you want to go to further places like Vanimo, Rebel, Wewak, all these places. It's Kyunga. It's like 1,600 kina, which is like equivalent to about $400, $600 US dollars, I should say, yeah. And again, it's 500, so it's very expensive, but we have no choice because there's no connection now. The government has a policy of connect PNG, and they are starting to build some roads. Now there could be a road from the highlands down to the city national capital district, but mostly the nation's capital. It's going to come. It's not. It's going to come from Mount Hagen to Southern Islands, then to Gulf province, and that's in the Papua southern region, and then to Mosby. But these are very expensive projects. They cost a lot of money to do all these things. So most of the Papua PNG projects are half complete, I should say.
Well, I think a lot of Greens would argue that if you build a train network, it's going to improve mobility for more people, a public transportation system, and you could link the villages to the cities. It would be ecologically less damaging to the environment, a railroad less than a road, and the amount of energy needed for a road, for a train is far less than, filling cars with gasoline, or even if they're electric, the electric power needed for an electric railroad is much smaller than for vehicles on roads per person traveled. So I think a lot of Greens, if they were designing a transportation system in a place like Papua New Guinea, which only has, air flights, they'd choose railroads over, roads with cars and trucks. And it would be less expensive and ecologically and economically more efficient.
That's right. That's right, but I don't think the government has any plans or have any plans yet. I've never heard of anybody suggesting to build railways in PNG. So, if we still had a Green Party leader, we should have asked him to think something along that line and maybe talk to the government, but we can't do much until the government. I don't know why they don't do that. They think it's expensive, though. I don't know why they do it. They're not thinking about railways yet.
Yeah, well, the world economy, and the auto manufacturers and the road builders are powerful. They're more powerful than the railroads. That's been a trend for a century, but it's been, from a green point of view, a bad trend.
Yeah.
Here's with 600 plus islands, the utility of trains would be limited outside the main island. Granted, but travel between islands you can do on boats rather than flying, which could be solar powered, electric powered. They're moving fast on that. Either direct electricity, or if it's a larger boat, hydrogen fuel cells, which can be, the hydrogen can be produced by renewable electricity. And with all the sunshine and wind, particularly around islands, that should be doable. Andrew Hager, what about the use of wind turbines to power electric vehicles and other essentials? Do you have much wind power or solar power in Papua New Guinea?
Oh yeah, we have only 2 seasons, wet season and dry season. So the solar lightings in many houses in PNG. They buy their own solar and just small solars for lighting only, and so they do that. Some MPs our MP Richard, he had a program in his district where he supplied power, solar to every house in the district. So we have solar here. But we don't have the wind, so but we just buy all this from the store and feed them.
Yeah, Justice V asked, what about ferries? Do the islands have ferries between them?
What is a ferry?
It's a boat. It carries, a boat for the
Oh,
regular
yeah.
public.
Yeah. We have ferries. Boat. Yeah, we have boats. We have ships, bigger ships working between Rabaul, Manus, Rabaul, Kimbe, Ley. We have shipping transport. Yeah, passenger boats, public transport.
So, well, our hour is up. I just want to comment. I saw Ashley pointed out that they have a first past the post system in, yeah, there it is. No single party has yet won enough seats to form a government in its own right. This is the part that is concerning, and I have some worries about first past the post, FPT, first past the post. Is that what that refers to? Implementation in the U.S. I mean, that's what we have. I mean, that's why I like that the Papua New Guinea Green Party, like the American Green Party, calls for proportional representation. And then, even if the parties were more on policy and not, sort of factions based on ethnicity or powerful oligarchs, you would have a system like Europe where you have 4, 5, or 6 parties that regularly get in parliament. None of them get a majority, so they have to form coalitions to run the executive branch. But that much better reflects, where the people are at than what we've got. Where, we're a special case. I mean, we have presidential elections where the guy that loses the popular vote ends up president, like George W. Bush and Donald Trump. So we don't even have majority rule. In any case, Andrew, thank you for coming on and letting us know. I hope people will look at the articles that were posted in the chat and check out those films. I mean, you just need to watch the first part of that film on bombing paradise to get a sense of how brutal the occupation of West Papua by Indonesia is. And the U.S. backs Indonesia on that. I mean, it's like East Timor. When Kissinger and Ford were around, like 1/3 of the people in East Timor were killed by the Indonesian army trying to take control of it. And one of the few cases where the West actually intervened and did the right thing is Australia went there with the backing of the West to kick the Indonesians out and let East Timor have independence. West Papua is the same thing, except a bigger case. So please look at that documentary and you'll get a sense of why, this is an issue that cries out for attention. And if you can send Andrew some money so we can do his fact-finding trip, the Western Union information is there. Just be sure to send him an email that you did it with the, what's it called, the MTCN number, because he needs that to get the money at the Western Union. So next week, we're going to have a guest. It's Dan Kapilovitz. He's the Green Party candidate for district attorney in Los Angeles. And that should be interesting. Greens don't often run for district attorney, but Dan has a very progressive program for the justice system in Los Angeles. So that should be interesting. So that's next Saturday, same time, 3 o'clock Eastern time. And so we'll see you then. And Andrew, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Howie. Thank you. All good.